it is, it's really a universally shared experience at this point. It's almost like a modern rite of passage.
Absolutely.
You wake up, right? And the sun might not even be fully up yet. The day hasn't officially begun. But there is already this inexplicable, incredibly heavy weight resting right on your chest.
Like a physical pressure?
Yes, exactly. Like your cortisol is already spiking. And before your feet even touch the floor, you can just sense this endless tide of obligations waiting to pull you under.
It really is the defining sensation of the current era. We live in this chronic state of bracing for impact.
Bracing for impact, yeah. That's a great way to put it because it's this profound feeling of being trapped in an exhaustive, never-ending pursuit of stability. You're just trying to keep your head above water, but the water just keeps rising.
Right. And the great irony here is that the pursuit of security somehow generates the very anxiety that destroys any feeling of safety.
Oh, wow. That's entirely true.
We are constantly scanning the horizon for threats. And in doing so, we keep our nervous systems locked in this state of high alert.
Right. And it totally translates into how we move through the physical world.
Right.
It is like, well, it's like you are stuck in this metaphorical current. You are rushing to reach a destination. Maybe it's a career goal or a financial milestone or honestly just getting through a Tuesday without a disaster. But you hit every single metaphorical red light along the way.
You're fighting the environment.
Exactly. You press the pedal harder, you grip the steering wheel until your knuckles literally turn white. And what happens?
Yeah.
The harder you press, the more resistance the universe seems to provide.
It's infuriating.
It really is.
Yeah.
You try to force the outcome, and it just slips further and further away. I mean, I know I have had days where simply trying to leave the house feels like I'm negotiating a hostage situation with the universe.
Well, the natural human instinct when faced with an obstacle is the application of kinetic force. It's basic Newtonian logic that's ingrained in us.
Meaning what exactly?
Meaning, if something is stuck, push it harder. We assume the environment is completely inert. We treat our lives like a broken machine that requires our brute strength to fix.
Right, get the hammer out and just smash it until it works.
Precisely. But this operates on a fundamental misunderstanding of the landscape we are actually navigating. When you apply desperate, frantic force to a complex system, you usually just break it further.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. Because I think a lot of people listening are nodding their heads, but they might be feeling, I don't know, a little defensive.
Sure, because it contradicts everything we're taught.
Right. Society tells us that hustle and grind are the only ways to succeed. If you aren't sweating, you aren't trying. So when you say applying force is a misunderstanding of the landscape, what exactly are we missing here?
Well, it comes down to the nature of the reality we're interacting with.
Like, what if the friction we experience, all those red lights and that heavy chest, isn't a sign that we need to push harder? What if it is a fundamental misinterpretation of how the grand mechanism of reality actually operates?
That is exactly the core of our exploration today. To truly understand this, we have to look at reality not as a solid, unyielding physical structure that we have to chisel away at.
Okay, then what is it?
We need to see it as something closer to a highly responsive, interactive feedback loop. Think of it as a vast, sophisticated mirror.
A mirror, okay.
Yeah. When you apply desperate, frantic force, the mirror simply reflects that tension back at you. The resistance you feel is actually your own internal friction externalized.
Oh, that makes me think of trying to flatten a crumpled piece of paper by aggressively pounding your fist on it.
That's a perfect visualization.
Right, because the sheer force you are applying, the anger, the frustration, it just creates new creases. You are causing the very chaos you're trying to smooth out.
You're adding energy to the distortion.
Exactly. And I think we've all been there. You try to force a relationship to work, sending text after text, trying to engineer the perfect conversation. Or maybe you try to force a career opportunity to manifest by relentlessly badgering a connection.
And we all know how that usually ends.
Right. You just watch the aggressive effort completely alienate the other person and drive the desired outcome away.
Precisely. Because you are operating under the assumption that the physical world is the cause and you are the effect.
Wait, isn't that how it works?
The framework we are looking at suggests the exact opposite. The system does not respond to your physical exertion. It responds to your internal emotional frequency.
It responds to your baseline state of being.
Yes. So when you pound on the paper, your internal state is one of frustration and lack. You are signaling to the environment, I am in distress. I am lacking control.
And the mirror just reflects that.
Exactly. The system, acting as an impartial mirror, simply processes that input and outputs more scenarios that perfectly match that emotional signature. It literally gives you more reasons to feel frustrated.
So wait, let me just pause here. If applying physical force pounding on the paper just makes more wrinkles, how are we actually supposed to smooth it out?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is, because how does this responsive feedback loop actually prefer to receive instructions? If I can't fix my problems by working 70 hours a week and aggressively micromanaging my life, what is the alternative?
Well, the alternative requires a radical shift in perspective. To alter the physical world, you must bypass the physical world entirely.
Bypass it entirely? That sounds kind of impossible.
It's not, but it takes discipline. You have to stop trying to manipulate the reflection in the mirror and instead change the object that is casting the reflection.
Meaning, change myself.
Yes. You have to reprogram the sensory blueprint within the mind.
Okay, a sensory blueprint. That sounds incredibly specific. We aren't just talking about like vague daydreaming or making a vision board with some nice pictures glued to it, are we?
No, absolutely not. Vague daydreaming usually just reinforces the feeling of longing because you're looking at something and acknowledging you don't have it.
Right, you're just wishing for it.
Exactly. We were talking about constructing an undeniable, hyper-specific sensory reality within your own consciousness. It requires a meticulous, almost clinical level of detail.
Why does it need to be so detailed?
Because the brain, particularly the subconscious mind, does not distinguish between a vividly imagined event and a physical external event. The neurochemistry is virtually identical.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because I want to ground this in a real-world application. It can sound very abstract otherwise.
Please do.
So there's this fascinating account that perfectly illustrates this, involving the manifestation of a staggering magnitude of wealth. And the process didn't start with someone just wishing on a star.
No, it rarely does.
It began with the intense observation of an object of desire. In this specific case, it was a solitary physical note of the highest currency denomination.
And the methodology employed here is critical for anyone trying to understand the mechanics of this process. The individual didn't just casually glance at the currency and think, I want a lot of these.
Right. They subjected it to rigorous multi-sensory study. They literally took a magnifying tool and explored the microtexture of the paper.
They traced the complex visual weight of the design, the intricate lines of the intaglio printing that make the ink stand up slightly from the surface.
They were studying it like a forensic scientist.
Exactly like that. They engaged their olfactory senses, breathing in the very specific, undeniable scent of the paper and ink.
That distinct, slightly metallic, earthy smell that physical currency possesses.
Yes. They engaged their tactile senses, feeling the friction of the paper between their fingers, the way it folded, the specific sound it made when it crinkled. They isolated every single sensory data point of that object.
So they were completely downloading the object into their mind. It wasn't just a fleeting visual memory. It was a total sensory immersion.
They were building a three-dimensional, fully interactive digital asset inside their own consciousness.
I really love the idea of this. It takes the mysticism completely out of it and makes it almost like coding. And once that object was fully downloaded, they didn't just stop there, did they?
No, the observation was just the preparation. The next step is the actual programming.
Right. They engaged in a highly specific imaginal act, and they did it in a very specific window of time, those fragile moments right before falling asleep.
And that timing is not coincidental at all.
Right. So in those moments, they visualized the act of physically counting out a massive, awe-inspiring volume of this exact currency. Stack after stack, a vast constellation of wealth, counted out methodically, night after night.
They felt the paper, smelled the ink, heard the snap of the notes. They built the entire scene.
So why is that state right before sleep so important? Let's unpack that.
Well, let's look at why the state akin to sleep is such a crucial variable in this equation. Throughout the day, your conscious mind is the ultimate gatekeeper.
It's the bouncer at the club.
Exactly. It is the part of you that analyzes, that doubts, that sees limitations, that argues fiercely for the solidity of whatever problem is currently stressing you out. It operates on logic and past experiences.
Right. It's constantly telling you why things won't work.
But as you transition into sleep, that analytical gatekeeper begins to power down. The brain waves slow from the rapid beta state to the slower alpha and theta states.
So the defense mechanisms drop.
Precisely.
Yeah.
The barrier between the conscious and the non-selective subconscious mind becomes incredibly thin, and the subconscious mind does not argue.
It just takes orders.
Yes, it simply accepts whatever data is presented to it as absolute truth. By performing this sensory-rich act during this specific transitional brainwave state, the individual was bypassing the critical faculty entirely.
They were directly inputting foundational code into the system.
Exactly.
Now, this is where the story takes a turn that I find absolutely mind-bending, because the real-world echo of this exercise is so literal, it is almost comical.
It really is a striking example.
Just a short time after doing this same individual is standing in a secure financial repository, a bank. They're just waiting in line, minding their own business. And a complete stranger ahead of them turns around, looking completely overwhelmed by a task, and inexplicably asks our subject for help.
Which is a highly unusual occurrence in a modern financial institution. You don't just ask strangers to handle things in a bank.
Extremely unusual.
Yeah.
And the task. The stranger needed help counting a massive, nearly identical constellation of currency. Stack after stack of the exact highest denomination the individual had been visualizing.
What's fascinating here is that this is perhaps the most profound part of the entire mechanism. What we observe here is the absolute unyielding literalness of the universe's response.
It just gave them exactly what they picture.
The manifestation was geometrically and situationally flawless. The individual vividly visualized the physical act of counting an immense fortune. In response, the system arranged a highly improbable sequence of events.
I mean, a stranger breaking social protocol to ask for assistance with large sums of cash in a secure facility.
Right. And it happened just to place the individual in the exact physical scenario they had programmed.
It is the ultimate genie in the bottle literalness. It's like one of those old fables where you make a wish, but you don't phrase it carefully enough.
Be careful what you wish for, because you will get exactly that.
Exactly. They got exactly, precisely what they pictured. The physical act of counting the money. But there was a critical, glaring flaw in their sensory blueprint.
A massive omission.
The physical manifestation perfectly matched the mental image, but it completely lacked the vital sensation of ownership. They were counting someone else's fortune.
It is a stunning realization of how precise this feedback loop really is. It doesn't fill in the blanks for you.
I was thinking about how to explain this, and it is exactly like typing a highly specific, complex address into your car's navigation system.
Okay, I like this analogy.
You drive for hours to get there, you pull up to this beautiful mansion, but you realize you forgot to specify to the universe that you want to be the owner of the house. You just programmed the route to get there.
You just wanted to see the location.
Right. So you end up being the delivery driver dropping off a package on the porch. You get to see the house, you get to touch the doorknob, but you don't get the keys.
That analogy perfectly illustrates the nuance of this mechanism. The responsive system, the simulation, the universe, however you choose to label it, is entirely impartial.
It doesn't care about what you actually want.
No, it does not infer your desires. It does not care about your ultimate well-being or what you meant to say. It simply replicates your exact emotional state and your sensory input.
So the act contained the tactile sensation of paper, the visual mathematics of the stacks, the smell of the ink.
But it lacked the psychological weight of possession.
The feeling of, this is mine.
Exactly. The feeling of this is mine is a distinct, measurable vibrational frequency. It changes how you breathe, how your shoulders sit, how your nervous system rests.
It's a completely different biological state.
Yes. Without that feeling encoded into the visualization, you are merely an observer of the phenomenon, not the benefactor. You are a tourist in your own manifestation.
That is such an incredible trap to fall into. I think about how many times people visualize being in a beautiful location, but they are just visualizing the scenery. They aren't visualizing the feeling of belonging there.
Which is why they might see it on a screen or hear about a friend going there rather than going themselves.
Right, so recognizing this massive glitch in their own programming, this individual went back to the drawing board. They didn't get mad at the universe. They realized they just wrote bad code.
They took accountability for the input.
Yes, they returned to the nightly imaginal act, but this time they flooded the visualization with the heavy, undeniable emotional weight of possession. They weren't just counting paper anymore, they were counting their paper.
They absorbed the joy, the relief, the sheer exultation and security of ownership.
They felt the weight of it in their chest. And, predictably, the correction yielded an entirely different class of result, right?
It had to. By altering the emotional core of the blueprint, adding that vital frequency of possession, the external environment was forced to shift to accommodate the new parameters.
So what happened next?
Well, shortly after adjusting the routine, the individual was presented with an opportunity in maritime vessel construction.
A completely out of the blue business deal.
Yes. And following a negotiation process, the counteroffer presented to them aligned flawlessly down to the exact magnitude of wealth they had been visualizing in their revised mental blueprint.
Oh, wow.
And crucially, to maintain the literalness we discussed earlier, it was paid entirely in the precise physical currency they had originally memorized.
It is genuinely stunning to think about. They literally rewrote the script, added the feeling of ownership, and the universe scrambled to deliver the exact physical props to make the scene the reality.
It really highlights the supremacy of feeling over mere imagery. The image is the vehicle, but the feeling is the engine.
But, okay, this brings up a massive contradiction, and I really want us to dig into this. Because if claiming ownership and intensely desiring an outcome is so vital, why does intense desire so often act like a repellent in real life?
Ah, that is the paradox of desire.
Right. It feels like the universe constantly plays this cruel joke on us. You want a specific job so badly you can't sleep, and you absolutely bomb the interview.
Or you over-prepare and freeze up.
Exactly. You want someone to text you back so desperately that your anxiety pushes them away. It seems like the things we care about the least come the easiest, and the things we want the most run from us.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is a hurdle that trips up the overwhelming majority of people. It hinges on the concept of detachment and how desire actually functions energetically.
Okay, explain that. How does desire function?
When you desire something with agonizing intensity, when you are, as you said earlier, gripping the steering wheel until your knuckles are white, the underlying emotional frequency you are broadcasting is not the frequency of the object itself.
What is it then?
It is the frequency of its absence.
Oh, wow. Wait, let me make sure I'm getting this. By intensely wanting it, I'm announcing that I don't have it.
Precisely. Intense desire is a continuous blaring declaration of lack. You are essentially telling the command line of reality, I am currently in a state of not having this thing, and I am desperate.
And the system acts as the mirror again.
Exactly. The system, acting as that faithful mirror, dutifully complies. It says, understood. You are embodying the state of lack. I will maintain your environment so that you continue to experience the state of lack.
So my desperation is the very mechanism keeping the object of my desire at a distance.
Yes. It is repelling it.
That is a brutal catch-22. Because how do you cultivate the feeling of having something without desiring it? It leads us to how tricky the human mind is, especially when it comes to focus.
The mind is very easily trapped by its own focus.
Let's look at the impossibility of negative visualization. There is this classic psychological concept. If I tell you right now, do not picture a note of currency. Do not picture the green ink. Do not picture the numbers on the corners. Do not think about the smell of money. What is the very first thing your brain does?
It conjures the image instantaneously. It has no choice.
Right. The more aggressively you try to avoid the thought, the more the matrix of your brain reinforces it. Your brain literally has to render the image first just to understand what it is supposed to be avoiding.
In cognitive psychology, this is known as ironic process theory.
The white bear problem.
Exactly. The deliberate attempt to suppress certain thoughts makes them more likely to surface. If you try not to think of a white bear, you will think of nothing but a white bear.
Right.
And in the context of programming our reality, it reveals a profound vulnerability, but also a profound loophole in the architecture of our minds. The subconscious mind does not process the concept of not.
It just ignores the negation entirely.
It only processes the subject of the focus. If you say, I do not want to be in debt, the subconscious only hears and visualizes debt.
Which is terrifying because we spend so much of our lives hyper-fixated on what we don't want to happen. I don't want to get sick. I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to be late.
And you are just handing the algorithm a list of things to populate in your reality.
But you mentioned the loophole.
Hmm.
And this leads us to what is known as the technique of refusal. If the subconscious ignores the not and intense desire pushes things away, how do we hack this?
We utilize the loophole of absolute refusal. This is where you assert that you emphatically do not want an outcome while simultaneously visualizing it.
I really need to wrap my head around this. So if I visualize something but mentally reject it, that creates abundance. How does that even work?
Think about how you feel about something you possess in absolute excess. Imagine you have a warehouse overflowing with a specific mundane item.
Okay, like what?
Let's say ordinary ballpoint pens. You have tens of thousands of them. They are falling out of your pockets. They are cluttering your desk.
Got it. Pen warehouse.
Now, if someone walks up to you and enthusiastically offers you one more ballpoint pen, what is your genuine, visceral reaction?
I would say, no thank you. Absolutely not. Please take it away. I have entirely too much of it already. I am sick of looking at it.
Exactly. That genuine refusal is the ultimate expression of abundance. It is the absolute absence of lack. You have zero desperation for a pen.
Because I already have way too many.
Right. So if we apply this to the mechanism of reality, when you couple a vivid visualization of an object with the genuine emotional sensation of refusing it because you are already utterly satiated, you create an incredibly powerful magnetic pull.
You remove the friction of desire entirely.
You completely short-circuit the desperation loop.
There is this fascinating, almost bizarre exercise used to demonstrate this concept. It's often called the ladder exercise. The premise is so strange, but it proves the point perfectly.
It's a classic experiment in this field.
Right. You are instructed to spend your nights in that state akin to sleep we talked about, vividly visualizing the physical exertion of climbing a ladder.
Again, using complete sensory immersion, not just watching yourself, but doing it.
Right. You feel the cold metal or rough wood of the rungs against your hands. You feel the shift in your body weight as you step up. You feel the tension in your calves. You build the sensory blueprint of climbing a ladder.
You are writing the code.
But, and here's the twist, during your waking hours, you passionately maintain an absolute indifference or even a militant refusal to ever climb a ladder.
You actively reject the premise in your waking life?
You write it down on sticky notes. You declare it to yourself, I will not climb a ladder. You walk past the ladder and think, I refuse to climb that.
The genius of this exercise lies in the cognitive dissonance it intentionally creates. The nightly visualization programs the subconscious with the inevitability of the action. You are writing the code. We are climbing a ladder.
The subconscious says, okay, ladder climbing is happening.
But the daytime refusal strips away all the desperation, all the attachment, all the friction that normally accompanies our desires. You don't care if you climb a ladder. In fact, you insist you won't.
You generate this powerful magnetic force because the simulation receives a crystal clear blueprint of an action. But it is coupled with the emotional signature of total satiation and indifference. There is zero lack.
The resistance is neutralized.
And the result of this exercise is almost universally identical. People report that the physical world begins to relentlessly populate their path with ladders. They encounter them in strange places.
They practically trip over them.
A friend suddenly needs help getting something off a roof. A situation arises at work where they are forced, practically against their conscious will, to step onto a ladder. The action is inevitably fulfilled because the subconscious blueprint demands it, and the waking indifference removed all the barriers.
It is a profound demonstration of how the system works when lack is removed.
It makes me want to ask everyone listening, have you ever noticed that the exact moment you finally stop caring if a message arrives, the very second you genuinely give up, say forget it, and toss your device onto the couch, the screen immediately lights up?
It happens so often it's practically a universal law.
What stands out to you in those moments? Because we have all experienced that specific brand of irony. It is the sudden drop in resistance, isn't it?
It is the instantaneous collapse of the frequency of lack. The moment you surrender the frantic desire, the moment you let go of the need to control the outcome, the pathway clears. The energetic bottleneck is removed.
The flow is restored. Let us examine a real-world, high-stakes application of this exact mechanism involving a content creator who had achieved a massive following.
This is a remarkable case study.
A really massive following.
Yeah.
A vast constellation of viewers. And because of this milestone, they deeply desired the physical accolade, a heavy physical trophy of recognition awarded by the platform's algorithm. It was the ultimate validation for their years of work.
However, the platform's algorithm categorically denied the accolade.
Shut them down completely. And it wasn't just a random mistake. It was due to a past infraction on their account. They had previously discussed content related to a sweeping global health restriction which violated the platform's rigid guidelines.
The rules were very clear.
The door was completely, firmly shut. There was no appeal process that was going to work within the standard logistical framework. Customer service said no. The system said no. The physical reality was a brick wall.
Now, in a state of normal consciousness, this is where one accepts defeat. The environment has provided a negative feedback loop, and logic dictates that the pursuit is over.
Right, you just move on.
But to circumvent this seemingly immovable physical barrier, the individual employed the method of reversal we just discussed. They engaged in a sustained ritual of refusal.
They took the ladder exercise and scaled it up to a major life goal. In a rhythmic repetition spanning the entire day, morning, noon, and night, they physically wrote down an absolute rejection of the accolade.
They actively cultivated a genuine feeling of indifference.
They adopted the mindset that they were already so successful, already so validated by their massive following, that if this piece of metal arrived in the mail, they would simply toss it in the garbage.
They systematically dismantled the pedestal they had placed the object on. They removed its power.
They weaponized their indifference. They built up this feeling of, I have so much abundance, this physical object is utterly meaningless to me.
But they didn't just stop at indifference.
No, and this is the critical part that makes the code work. While maintaining that waking indifference and writing down their refusal, they coupled it with their nightly visualizations. As they drifted off into that theta state, they pictured holding the heavy prize.
They felt its edges, its weight.
They vividly heard and read digital congratulations from their inner circle.
So they perfectly replicated the architecture of the ladder exercise, but applied to a high-stakes, emotionally charged scenario. The waking mind broadcast complete detachment and abundance, neutralizing any resistance or feelings of unfairness.
And the transitioning mind, slipping into sleep, implanted the structural blueprint of the desired reality.
Exactly. They bypassed the platform's logic entirely by operating on the foundational logic of the mind.
And the outcome is just staggering to consider. The platform, the very institution with the rigid, unbending automated rules, inexplicably reverses its guidelines.
Without any external prompting.
After just a fleeting passage of time, they reach out to the creator, offering the accolade without any further explanation, without a formal appeal even being processed. The prize simply arrives at the doorstep.
It's incredible.
The entire system completely bypassed its own established hard-coded rules to match the creator's internal frequency of ownership and indifference.
It demonstrates a principle that is very difficult for the modern, rationally trained mind to accept.
Which is what?
That the rules of the physical world, no matter how rigid they appear, are ultimately subordinate to the foundational code of consciousness. When the internal frequency shifts comprehensively from a state of lack to a state of absolute indifferent ownership, the external environment is compelled to adapt.
Even if it means breaking its own rules.
Even if it means contradicting its previously established logic, the physical world is fluid. The internal state is the solid anchor.
I was trying to find a good analogy for this, and the concept of quicksand comes to mind. If you accidentally wander into quicksand, your natural evolutionary instinct is to thrash.
Of course, you want to survive.
You want to fight, to apply kinetic force, to aggressively desire escape. You want to pull your legs out. But physics dictates that the harder you struggle, the faster the sand consumes you.
Yeah.
Your panic, your effort, accelerates your demise.
The action causes the reaction.
True buoyancy, the only actual way to survive the situation, requires a completely counterintuitive surrender. You have to stop fighting. You have to lay back, increase your surface area, and detach from the panic to rise to the surface. You survive by refusing to fight the sand.
That is a magnificent parallel. Thrashing in quicksand is mechanically identical to worrying about scarcity or fighting against an obstacle. Your panic creates a vacuum that pulls you deeper into the problem.
It just sucks you right in.
Which brings us to perhaps the most challenging aspect of this philosophy. The absolute necessity of unsubscribing from the resonance of lack.
Unsubscribing from lack.
Okay. If we accept the premise that the external world is a responsive algorithmic feed driven by our emotional states, then our everyday reactions, our casual complaints, our deep-seated worries take on monumental importance. They are not just passing thoughts.
They are programming language.
Exactly.
This is huge, and I think it is the hardest pill to swallow. The idea that we unknowingly perpetuate our own suffering. But if you think about it like interacting with a digital media feed, it makes perfect sense.
How so?
If you log onto a social platform and you constantly engage with negative, enraging, or fear-inducing content, even if you are just arguing with the video in the comments or hate watching something, the algorithm doesn't care about your moral stance. It doesn't know you hate it.
It only measures your engagement.
Right. By interacting with the fear, you effectively subscribe to that frequency. You tell a machine, show me more things that make my heart race like this.
The simulation of our reality functions precisely like a digital algorithm. Worry, stress, Anger over scarcity, frustration with the environment, these are all high engagement emotional states.
So the universe reads our stress as engagement.
Yes. When you focus your energy on your debt, on your physical limitations, on the unfairness of a specific situation, your subconscious algorithm registers this intense focus. It measures the cortisol, the elevated heart rate, the constant attention.
It sees all that data and thinks, wow, they really care about this.
It concludes, this consciousness is highly engaged with the theme of scarcity. Consequently, it curates your future experiences to deliver an endless tide of similar scenarios tomorrow, purely to keep you engaged.
You are guaranteeing your own misery. You are literally placing a daily subscription order for more of the thing you hate.
Which leads to the imperative to entirely detach from the illusion of the physical world when it is showing you something you don't want.
But it feels so real.
I know, but if the world is a projected game, reacting to a hostile interaction or panicking over a physical deficit is as illogical as yelling at your own reflection in a mirror to try and get it to smile first.
Oh, that's such a good point.
You can yell at the mirror all day. The expression isn't going to change until you change your face.
To change the reflection, you must change the source. And there's a profound historical illustration of this principle, isn't there? The account of an individual who discovered absolute peace and stillness while confined within a highly restrictive penal institution.
Yes. And we are talking about a scenario where the physical circumstances were the absolute epitome of limitation, deprivation, and total external control. Every aspect of their physical agency was stripped away.
It is the ultimate paradox. The true liberation, the genuine, unshakable happiness was discovered not when they were walking free in the world, going wherever they wanted, but when they were locked inside a cell.
Because true freedom isn't geographical.
Right. Because the physical freedom they had prior to confinement was actually a mental prison of anxiety, chasing outcomes, and self-destruction. The penal institution, ironically, forced a complete halt to the external distractions. It forced the individual to finally sit still and confront their internal chaos because they had nowhere left to run.
And when that internal chaos finally ceased, when they stopped thrashing in the quicksand of their circumstances, a profound shift occurred.
They changed the baseline.
Yes. When they finally achieved a baseline state of profound peace, despite the hostile physical environment around them, the foundational code was rewritten. The narrative establishes that once this internal state of unshakable peace is locked in, when the internal frequency shifts from prisoner to liberated soul, the external floodgates eventually swing open entirely on their own.
The physical reality had to catch up to the mental reality.
Exactly. The physical liberation follows the mental liberation as an inevitable shadow. They did not break out of the facility. The circumstances of the external world shifted to accommodate their new internal frequency of freedom.
Okay. I have to step in here. I want to push back on this hard. Because while the story of finding enlightenment in a cell is beautiful, we need to talk about the everyday reality for the people listening.
I welcome the pushback. What's the concern?
Well, we are talking about ignoring massive looming problems in favor of cultivating internal peace. If I am listening to this and I have a literal mountain of obligations staring me in the face, if the bank is calling about foreclosure, if the roof is leaking and destroying my living room, if I am facing eviction, how does one practically turn a blind eye to that?
It's incredibly challenging.
It sounds irresponsible. It sounds like toxic positivity.
Yeah.
Isn't there a massive risk of just playing pretend while the house burns down to the ground around you? If I just sit on my couch and visualize peace, the bank is still going to take my house on Tuesday.
That is the most common, valid, and necessary question regarding this entire philosophy. It requires a very clear distinction.
Okay, let's hear the distinction.
The distinction lies in the profound difference between passive, avoidant ignorance and active somatic reprogramming. This is not about irresponsible escapism. It is not about pretending the fire does not exist or suppressing your fear.
So what is it about?
It is about understanding the mechanics of problem solving within a responsive reality. It is acknowledging that trying to extinguish a fire of scarcity using the fuel of a scarcity mindset is a mathematical and psychological impossibility.
Wait, explain that. How is panicking over the fire fueling the fire?
When you are in a state of panic, your nervous system enters a sympathetic survival state, fight or flight. Your brain literally shuts down access to the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for creative problem solving, lateral thinking, and recognizing subtle opportunities.
Oh, wow.
You develop cognitive tunneling. You can only see the threat. Therefore, you can only react to the threat using blunt force, which, as we established earlier, usually creates more friction. When you react to the mountain of obligations with terror, you are energetically and biologically reinforcing the mountain.
Okay, that makes sense from a neurological standpoint. When I panic, I make stupid decisions. I send the angry email, I take the bad loan, I just thrash in the quicksand.
Precisely. So when we talk about detaching, it is not about ignoring the fire. It is about stepping out of the burning room for a moment to regulate your nervous system so you can remember where the main water valve is.
You are shifting to the foundational code.
Yes. When you detach and cultivate a state of internal abundance or peace, you pull yourself out of cognitive tunneling. You are starving the mountain of its energetic structural integrity. The panic dissolves.
But you still have to deal with the mountain.
Yes, you still take physical actions, you still answer the phone, you still try to fix the roof, but those actions are now inspired by a state of completion, clarity, and calm, rather than driven by the frantic, blinding panic of survival.
That is a massive distinction. You aren't doing nothing. You're just changing the engine that drives your actions. You're acting from peace, not acting for peace.
Exactly.
And that perfectly transitions us into the practical day-to-day application of all this. How do we navigate the chaotic flow of everyday life? It seems we have to differentiate between two completely different modes of creation.
It helps to separate them into two categories, yes.
There is the overarching concept, which is maintaining a baseline identity of abundance, smoothing out the overall journey. And then there is spontaneous creation, which involves targeted, almost magical interventions for sudden, seemingly immovable physical roadblocks.
That is an excellent taxonomy. The baseline identity is your general state of being. It dictates the prevailing weather patterns of your life over the long term. If your baseline is general trust and peace, you experience fewer catastrophic storms.
But storms still happen.
Of course, even in a generally favorable climate, sudden, acute logistical hurdles arise. A flight gets canceled, a deal falls through at the last minute. This is where targeted mental acts become essential tools for navigating the simulation.
And we have a remarkable historical scenario illustrating this precise application, right?
Yeah.
Involving an individual stranded on a distant island with their loved ones following a holiday.
Yes, this perfectly illustrates the targeted intervention.
Right, they are completely stuck. There is a total absence of transit options back to a distant, bustling metropolis before the close of the season. They need to get back, but the physical reality is an absolute, undeniable dead end.
Every avenue is closed.
Every transit agency says the exact same thing. The ships are fully booked for a massive expanse of time. There are no wait lists. There are no secret tickets. It is over. But rather than panicking or arguing with the ticket agents or accepting the limitation and ruining the rest of their time, this individual decides to execute a targeted intervention.
They understood that applying kinetic force, yelling at clerks, refreshing a web page endlessly was futile. They did not rely on hope. They engineered an experience.
So what did they do?
They took a small vessel out into the harbor to carefully observe a massive docked ship that was scheduled to make the journey. They meticulously downloaded its architecture into their mind, just like the individual with the currency.
The sensory blueprint again.
Yes. They studied the gangplank, the layout of the decks, the sheer scale of the vessel, the smell of the salt water against the hull. They gathered the necessary sensory data to construct a robust, high-fidelity simulation in their mind.
And then what?
Then they retreated to a quiet room, sat in an easy chair, and went to work. They closed their eyes and mentally stepped onto that ramp.
They didn't just see a movie of themselves doing it, they associated into the body.
Exactly. They felt the slight sway of the board under their feet, and they invoked a very specific emotion, the bittersweet sorrow of departure.
Oh, that's incredibly nuanced.
They mixed the genuine nostalgia of leaving this beautiful distant island with the profound relief of finally returning home. They anchored the visualization in complex, authentic, undeniable human emotion. It wasn't just a sterile image.
But it is crucial to note the reality of the struggle documented during this exercise, because it provides immense relief to anyone attempting this.
The struggle is part of the process.
The individual's mind wandered continuously. They would mentally reach the top of the gangplank, lose focus, start thinking about what they were going to have for dinner, and have to bring their attention all the way back and start over at the bottom of the ramp.
Which is so common. It's how the human brain functions.
Which is so refreshing to hear. Because I think people assume you have to be some kind of enlightened Zen master with perfect laser-like focus to do this. But this addresses a massive misconception. Manifestation does not require unbroken, superhuman concentration.
Imperfect focus does not negate the power of the act, provided you are persistent enough.
You just have to wrangle your brain back to the task until that specific emotional signature is ultimately captured and held right before you drift into the state of sleep.
Persistence is more vital than perfection. The subconscious merely needs the final imprint. And the resolution to this targeted intervention is where the universe really shows off its algorithmic brilliance.
Tell me about the resolution.
The very next morning, they receive a sudden, unexpected communication. The transit authority informs them that a prior reservation holder found their journey inconvenient and canceled at the last possible moment, opening the exact necessary passage at the perfect time for this individual and their family.
And this is where my mind just explodes.
Yeah.
Because of how neat and tidy it is. It raises this massive question about synchronicity.
The how of it all.
The transit agent could logically explain the opening. There was no magic portal that appeared on the dock, a cable was received, another party changed their plans, a refund was issued, a slot opened up. The universe always provides a highly logical, rational, verifiable sequence of events to explain away the manifestation.
The system consistently covers its tracks. It adheres to the established physical laws of cause and effect to deliver the orchestrated outcome.
It is so coincidental that you could easily dismiss it as pure luck. It makes me think of a massive theater stage crew.
I love this analogy.
We, our consciousness, are the eccentric director sitting in the dark theater, shouting out the emotional cues and the final scenes. And the universe, the simulation, is the frantic stagehand behind the curtain.
Running around trying to make it happen.
Exactly. The moment we lock in a new feeling of ownership, the moment we mentally walk up that gangplank, the stagehand is running around in a panic. They are hurriedly moving props, sending a thought to a stranger halfway across the world to cancel their ticket, making a banker drop a stack of money so they need help counting it. The stagehand is doing all this chaotic background work just to make the final scene make logical sense to the audience when the curtain goes up.
That is a brilliant visualization of the mechanism. The stagehand must obey the director, but they must also ensure the set doesn't collapse. If the universe continuously covers its tracks with these logical sequences, we must deeply consider the nature of our daily reality.
Meaning what?
How much of our everyday luck, both the serendipitous windfalls and the disastrous catastrophes, is actually the delayed, perfectly logical echo of our own persistent subconscious programming?
That is a heavy thought.
The things we dismiss as random chance, the string of bad luck we complain about, are simply the stagehands finally executing the complex set changes we unwittingly ordered days, weeks, or eras ago through our anxiety or our peace.
It changes absolutely everything about how you walk through the world. It strips away the comfort of being a victim. It means we have to take absolute, unflinching responsibility for the script we are writing every single second of the day.
It is the ultimate responsibility.
And as we zoom out from these specific techniques, the sensory blueprints, the ladder exercise, the islands, and the vessels, we arrive at the ultimate implication of everything we have explored today.
The broader reflection on human potential here is staggering. It demands a complete paradigm shift. The core truth we must confront is that we are not, nor have we ever been, victims of circumstance.
We are not just at the mercy of the world.
We are not fragile organisms passively enduring an endless tide of random, chaotic events generated by a cold, indifferent universe.
We are active, boundless participants in a highly responsive matrix. We've traced the entire progression today. We started with mastering the sensory blueprint, learning that we have to download the texture, the scent, and the physical weight of our desires.
But more importantly, the psychological weight of ownership.
Right. We explored the paradox of desire and how to weaponize our indifference using the loophole of refusal to signal overwhelming abundance to the system.
We talked about the vital, daily necessity of unsubscribing from the resonance of lack, treating our emotional reactions and our worries like the powerful algorithm they are.
And finally, we saw how to orchestrate reality through focused, targeted intent when the physical world puts up a seemingly immovable roadblock, knowing that the universe will scramble behind the scenes to make the path logical.
When an individual truly awakens to the reality of the self as the architect of existence, the entire paradigm of suffering collapses. You recognize that you are a vital, indivisible fragment of the infinite.
The simulation is not something happening to you. It is something happening through you.
The magnitude of this realization requires a profound elevation of personal responsibility. You can no longer blame the economy, or the transit authority, or the algorithm. It requires a radical surrender of fear, replacing it with the quiet confidence of authorship.
It is, without a doubt, the most empowering realization a human being can possibly have. It hands you the keys to the kingdom. So I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought to carry with you.
I think they are ready for it.
Think about that heavy chest we talked about at the very beginning of this journey. Think about the friction, the red lights, the feeling of being trapped in the quicksand. If your internal state, your baseline emotion, is the true, undeniable origin point of absolutely everything you encounter in the physical world, what incredible sweeping reality are you unknowingly setting into motion right at this very moment with your current mood?
What set changes are the stagehands frantically preparing for you based on how you feel right now?
It is a question that demands continuous, conscious awareness. Step out into your day with the unshakable certainty of a creator who has finally learned to read and write the code. When you feel that friction, when you hit that red light, don't pound on the crumpled paper. Step back, take a breath, change the emotional blueprint, and watch the mirror transform. Have a beautiful journey as you step back into your own beautifully curated simulation,